Okay. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Gamer Librarian podcast. We are on episode 115. That's pretty crazy. I mean, as someone who loves Call of Duty Zombies in terms of the music that's there, I mean, this is a milestone that I, you know, think we would do, right? That we would achieve 115 episodes. So it's just going to keep going, right? And we have a decent amount of things to talk about now. We are in for the end of the year for 2025, which means a lot of things, right? Christmas, I call the Game Awards Christmas. Game Awards came and we saw what they had to give us. I think we're seeing that the big three, Steam, Sony, PlayStation, are withholding from these bigger other third party showcase events. Now, I think that things like maybe Evo might get stuff like a character reveal in some cases, in just some ways, right? Those championships and stuff like that. But we did not have any real massive returning property from like any of these companies or any kind of like big IP push for something new. It's insane. It's insane to see where this is all going for video games. Steam just put out their Steam Machine ad, and we're all thinking maybe Left 4 Dead 3, Portal 3, Half-Life 3, right? All of that kind of stuff. But for what we saw from the Game Awards, we see that the big three are taking a step back and only really doing their own showcases and doing their own reveals at those showcases, especially Nintendo. I mean, it's insane to see what kind of experience you have at these events and how different they are when you go through them for so much of your life. Now, the Smash reveals have been going on for a good amount of time, right? I think maybe 2014 or so since like Smash 4 for the Wii U. And I only got around until really Ultimate, which is super cool. But the experience that you have at those and what you want from that, it's definitely different. Now, what did I want from there? At least that Smash to Switch upgrade, whatever ultimate thing that kind of seemed what they were going for. And the Game Awards seems like the proper way to reveal that, right? The real end cycle for Smash Bros, where the characters are usually always announced, right, in the past for Ultimate. But I guess rating for their own showcases is fine. Now, what does that mean? Because their own games for the Switch 2, they're done. I mean, we don't have much in terms of what's upcoming, right? They have that Galaxy movie, the Mario movie, and then that is really just it, right? No games. Metroid Prime 4 is out. I've been playing that. And then Bonanza came out, didn't win much at Game of the Year awards, besides Family Game, which is right. That is awesome, but there's not even like co-op, right? In terms of like the real like way. Some of the other games had like a little more in-depth co-op. This one was just like point shoot kind of stuff. That's it was okay. And then yeah, there's for the Game Awards, it definitely seems like it's not the event that we, you know, have come to expect at all times. But there were some other really exciting announcements that I think were shocking in some ways. Now, let's say the Star Wars one, Fate of the Old Republic. Where is the Old Republic remake or the Nice Old Republic remake that we've been being teased on forever? You know, I mean, I don't know if we need all these Star Wars projects in limbo in development. I like Star Wars, right? It's a cool universe, but it's not really just the games. It's definitely just more the franchise and how it's been handled and how it's just not delivered. And I just don't really want to, really go back to Star Wars right now. And there's not even gameplay. Like we don't really have much on gameplay for any of these games. I think that like the Mass Effect style game really died, and we're really not gonna be going back there. I don't know if that's really just gonna happen ever again. Divinity. Divinity is huge. So that's what the statue is for. Obviously, it's a new Divinity game. Now, I've only ever played the original Sin. So I guess like those first two games. And they're very fun, right? The Baldur's Gate-esque type games, right? With the tactical RPG-ness, right? Very, very cool. D&D Baldur's Gate obviously has that more flair. Like Divinity is definitely its own beast, and I'm more excited to see how the lessons they learned from Baldur's Gate improves Divinity in some ways and puts Divinity front facing on the RPG experience. Because now they're there. Now they're ready. On top of that, they have the Divinity Original 2, Divinity Original Sin 2 RPG upgrade for the Switch 2, PC, whatever. Thank God I already got that on the Switch because I'm mad excited. It looks really, really good. The upgrade looks really worth it. So ultimately, it for Divinity, there was no gameplay except for a very, very graphic cinematic cutscene. Crazy insane. And ultimately with that, that is just something that is exciting, but was it worth all of that hoopla? Because as much as Baldur's Gate is awesome and like a big massive hit, some like big statue for something like that, it definitely didn't feel like it was coming from within some want of the gaming space, Bloodborne, something like that. I mean, not that people didn't want a new Divinity, but I think that like Baldur's Gate 3 already being such a massive RPG hit, this might have, it might have to be really, really, really good on top of the insane quality that Baldur's Gate 3 was. And I'm trying to say in terms of that weren't the D&D license and then maybe like certain things just like the D&D dice roll, that kind of stuff, that might be something that might not be there. I don't know. I don't know. But ultimately, it's something to be concerned about in terms of something that was worth this big giant statue for. But I do like Divinity. I like tactical RPGs, and we know it's going to succeed. It's just whether or not, was the big statue worth it? And when people are clamoring for Bloodborne. And then, right, there's Coven of the Chicken Foot. That did look great. There was some ads for things like Game Pass and things that we already know about. Resident Evil confirming Leon Kennedy. That's very, very cool. Control, new Control game, awesome. It did have some gameplay, which was, really, really cool in terms of just what we could see. Whether or not that was certainly in game or not, it was just like something. Gang of the Dragon stuff, it's definitely the Yakuza stuff. And then the Tomb Raider thing was weird, a remake of Legacy of Atlantis, and then you have Tomb Raider Catalyst, which is a whole new game. Two games at once, I don't know. That's definitely something that was weird that you could have done, right? And then everything else was just kinda the last Badger. Very, very exciting. I believe that this game's gonna bring back the platformer-esque that we've been missing, the modern platformerness. I'm ready. I'm ready for that game. Star Wars Galactic Racer, that's just, the pod racing game, and then the new Mega Man game, which is insane because there's a lot of contention about that game. I'm not a big Mega Man fan, and whether or not the quality is good or not, I'm not gonna say. The art style is definitely just, something. I feel like there should be a little more pop or detail or something. I'm not a big Capcom guy, a big Mega Man guy. Mostly Capcom has relatively decent games. I haven't finished Devil May Cry 5, which is insane. I just haven't really finished that game at all. And then everything else was things that we are already seen. There's, the Guild Wars 2 Pragmata coming to Switch and that demo. I'm very excited. Yeah, we're going through the list here. Everything else is just either games that are already out or just updates to old games. No new titles. So, that's not that disappointing for a lot of people. For me, it mostly is because just like I'm more about the new upcoming games, and a lot of these games are just kind of sequels. Now, a game that did look cool was Coven the Chicken Foot. I that game. It looks very fun. And yeah, for the Game Awards, was it what we expected this year? No, no, I don't think so. But I think we got to push forward. So before we get into some of the other things we have in this relatively short episode, right? We've been playing Battlefield 6. Season 2 is right around the corner for season 2. I I think maybe 2 maps, probably the best bet. They'll probably do it in like one batch each, but I would like a little more detail on the maps. They all kind of feel just like construction works, industrial places, right? Besides, like I guess the new LA one, which is residential to away. You know, let's get a coast one. Let's get one with like boats and stuff. The maps have gotten pretty stale overall, and that's something that's got to be changed. I don't mind using the same like few guns every few often, but overall, I just want a map change. The weather effects, though, that's a seasonal thing. I would like something a little more permanent in terms of that regard. I kind of like that. I would like that to be a more returning thing or some feature in some way. That's very cool to me. And then Metal Gear Solid 3 will have to be finished this year. Gonna have to make that a priority, switching between Battlefield 6, Metal Gear Solid, just, slowly making my way through, and Metroid Prime, which has been a surprise. We've gotten the motorcycle, and the overworld is decent for the most part. The first desert area that I got, and we're in the ice area going through there relatively early on, but it's fun, a lot prettier than I expected it to be on the Switch versus the trailers that we saw this year. Maybe it should have been nominated for some Game of the Year stuff in terms of like, I don't know, returning game or something. I don't know. But it definitely feels like this game isn't a step forward in a big way. I mean, I miss that ship. I don't know where the ship is. The motorcycle is just kind of okay. It just feels weird. But overall, it's got some things going for it with the controls. I'm liking how the controls feel. I'm getting a lot more inclined with them. But yeah, video games, that's probably gonna be like the three that we finish by this year, right? It's gonna be Metal Gear Solid 3, Metroid Prime 4. We don't have a whole lot of other games to really play, and to be honest, time to play those games. That is something that we have struggled with here on the podcast. But there's other things that we try to keep up with, do, finish, and that's manga. manga has been something that we've tried to keep up with for a decent amount of time. If you've been following around for any length of time, we always switch off between a good portion of, you know, the newest One Piece. We try to do Berserk or something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Those are the relatively long form standing ones. But we also really try to do ones that are completed, maybe even unfinished or permanently unfinished, and just give them a shot. And one of them that we've been doing is Gantz. Never saw the anime. I saw a still from Facebook from a manga group, and the still looked so cool that I was like, I'm gonna have to read Gantz. So we got to chapter 20. I believe that's the end of the first game for our main character. And I don't really like the main character. He seems like the kind of stuck up, like snob kind of douchey dude. But I'm digging it so far. It's gotten me intrigued, even though it makes no sense, whatever the guy in the sphere named Gantz is. So we're trucking along with that. Very, very fun. So this is really like what the crux of the podcast has kind of been is slowly going through manga as part of the librarian aspect. So that's been pretty fun. Hopefully in the future, you know, if we're blessed enough, we get a continuation of the Dragon Ball Super manga. That's really the one that we've been heralding continuously forever. And other than One Piece, like it's really just hoping for more Dragon Ball because I would love to just have dates set to be hyped about Dragon Ball to really be on gear with manga. Because other than that, I'm not really going to keep up with Berserk or JoJo's when they come out because it's like once a month or every 3 months. Black Clover is almost done, which is really cool. And then we also try to read Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo. This has been a newer manga that we've been going through, just like Dan the Dan or Chainsaw Man. Those two we kind of just, flip flop off. But I'm really digging Jujutsu Kaisen. It's been really fun seeing the development with these characters, and the time skip was really, intriguing. We see a lot of, you know, characters and their descendants in some ways. Chapter 15 was really cool. So don't want to go into spoilers for anybody who's not really caught up on JJK right now, but it's definitely worth the read to get onto Shonen Jump or Viz Media. If they would sponsor me, that would be, one of the best things because I'm subscribed to them constantly. So it'd just be, really dope. I'd be talking about manga forever, and you guys need to be start getting paying out licensing for the things because you're like the only relatively good manga app out there. Unless there's another manga app that wants to sponsor and get used, I would I would take it. Definitely something to think about. But for right now, that's pretty much all we're gonna talk about manga. I just want to talk a little bit about Gantz because we're talking about that in the future, probably more in depth. Probably get a cover thumbnail. Couldn't find any online, but I'm intrigued so far. And the last thing that we should talk about is it. Welcome to Derry. And to preface this, I have read the book numerous times. I've seen the movies a decent amount of times. Just watched the first and the remakes very recently this weekend. And as an Stephen King adaptation goes for its prequelness, it was 10 out of 10. It was 10 out of 10, right? It was definitely something that could have been so much worse than what we would have thought it would have been. But I think the highs and lows and the shocks for someone who was already a fan of it and knew what to kind of expect, there was shocks. There were things to be surprised about. There were moments to be confused, and then maybe some scary. But was that a worthwhile adaptation? I don't think so. I don't think so because as someone who read the books, it felt like the books were its own contained, event, and then I guess the movies, they're building their own universe because it's definitely not the same. I mean, I don't know what Stephen King okayed or approved or allowed. I won't look it up, but in terms of what the impact of that story does, it kind of it kind of muddies the water, and it kind of makes things kind of more grander than they were or maybe should have been. And I don't know. It definitely wasn't the kind of focus that I was thinking of. Maybe it'll become something like that later on. Who could say? But it was a fun ride from episode 1 to the end. It definitely was. It was just definitely. So we're gonna get to it. They expect a season 2. I mean, it's called It Welcome to Derry Chapter 1, and then they expect a season 2. That is insane. It almost kinda ruins the book in a way, just because of the way it's shoved in there in some way. I don't know. Is it gonna be fun? Maybe later on, certainly, but now we're just getting into, him going to the past, and wow, that's just insane. I don't know what that means. So, like, who can say what's gonna happen? But maybe somebody else is gonna own this property and just can it. That might also happen. So, to say that the year might end on this note is pretty insane. Just wanted to, talk about that for a minute because I'm a big Stephen King guy. We talk about Stephen King stuff, and it was a big shock for the It show to be as graphic and then gruesome and overall enjoyable as just it was. I thought it would be pretty dull. I really did, but it was really enjoyable, even though for what it is does to the overall canon of the story or whatever. And there was a slight nod to The Mist in the very last episode, which it kind of just knocks it up a point for me. Just kind of, it really just kind of does it for me. I really, really dig that. So, that's really just it. Go read The Mist, go read it, go watch the show, go play video games. Peace. I hit this share button.